Simona-Mirela who I believe is in Paris, but we didn't clarify. Is that the case?
It is the case. Hello, bonjour, bună ziua.
Okay, all three languages. And I always like to begin with a slight academic biography, because in this case, it's particularly distinguished. Ambassador Miculescu graduated from Babeș-Bolyai University in 1982, where she got a BA in French and English literature, and then went back in 1999 to get her PhD in French literature. She has a degree from George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and currently she serves as the Permanent Delegate of Romania at UNESCO since 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And right. She has recently been named as President of the UNESCO General Conference for another 4 years, I think. Oh, no, another 2 years to 2025.
Exactly.
And then, of course, I got to know the ambassador when she was in Washington, in New York City at the United Nations from 2008 to 2015. She made a correction earlier when we were talking beforehand. I had as the first female ambassador, but that's not quite right. It's the first female ambassador with the rank of ambassador to her last dying day. So that is a particularly unique distinction that I commend you for. And she also served in Belgrade and as well as in Iraq for a number of years. Well, I guess one obvious, I was kind of curious, what did you get your degree in French literature? You are in France and you were speaking French earlier. What was your degree? What was your subject?
Well, to tell you the truth, my real dream in life was to be an actress and singer. But in the communist years, the social origin prevailed over talent. So my parents plotted a little bit with my mentor. So to make the long story short, I gave up and I chose, as I like to say, I chose to be an actress on the world stage, which doesn't mean that I joined the foreign ministry before the revolution, because I couldn't. Women couldn't be diplomats before the revolution. So because of my love, or due to my love and passion for theater, I chose a topic very, very close to that. Actually, it's comparative literature. The topic was Shakespearean intertextuality in the context of the absurd theater. So I got to research actually everything that's Shakespearean in Eugène Ionesco's work, in Samuel Beckett's work. So it was a pretty fascinating time of my life. And I have to confess that, at the beginning in the 90s, there was absolutely nothing on intertextuality in Romania, because intertextuality at that moment was purely a linguistic concept. And I had the guts to transform it into literature. And I remember in 1993, the president of that time, President Ion Iliescu, made a trip to Washington, D.C. And I used to be the spokesperson of the foreign ministry, by the way, the first female spokesperson of the foreign ministry ever. And I had the responsibility to go with the delegation and take care of the press delegation. And we had 2 hours for ourselves. And I went directly during those 2 hours to the Library of Congress, and I searched the topic, and I found, and it was a wonder that I could print all that bibliography. I got like 80 pages of titles. Can you imagine what a treasure for me? So I'm very fond. And Washington, D.C. played a big role in, my research for my PhD.
Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, I didn't realize your interest in singing and performance. We're actually doing something on Maria Tenace for the History Channel right now. And so when you mentioned the thing about gender, how many female diplomats as a percentage represent Romania versus male diplomats, or roughly speaking? None before 89, but how about now?
Before 1989, there were very few women ambassadors, but they were not career diplomats. They were like high officials of the Communist Party. So there was, I think, one woman ambassador. Diplomats, no diplomats, but ambassadors. Yes, there was one woman who was ambassador to Greece, but she was a prominent figure in the Communist Party. So after the revolution, we caught up. Now I think that more than maybe even 60% of the staff of the foreign ministry are women. And I think, well, I'm not very good with figures. My colleagues in the HQ are much better in this, but I think that we reached a percentage of maybe more than 35% women heads of diplomatic missions. And I count here also the general consulates. So not only embassies or permanent missions in the multilateral diplomacy, but also general consulates. But I know that in the HQ, there is pure parity. So all the management posts are 50% male, 50% women. So it's quite a difference.
Quite a turnaround, a fantastic one as well. I mean, you don't have political appointees, or very few, like American ambassadors, certainly in Europe. There are many political appointees, but not so much in Romania, no?
Exactly. There are just a few political appointees. The majority of the heads of diplomatic missions are, and especially of the embassies, are career diplomats. Maybe at the level of the general consulates, there are more political appointments than, no, for sure, there are more political appointments than in the case of ambassadors.
And embassies. Now, here we are. We just finished with Paris, with the Olympics. Romania did very well. They seem to have picked up a bronze in the last 24 hours.
Excuse me, they got the bronze in the first day of the competition.
At the time. Yeah. Well, it was seemed to be codified recently. And, you know, and of course, sports plays such a huge event in terms of global attention. And Romania seemed to move very confidently up the ladder from where it was a few years ago, maybe not to Nadia's day, but how does it help project the country to the world? I mean, how significant do these Olympics help Romania as a nation?
Well, it is the most important global sports competition that actually unites nations or sometimes divides nations. So you can imagine that the visibility that Romania got due to these absolutely fantastic athletes to whom we are very grateful, and not only to those who earned medals, to all of them. They did a great job. And as I wrote after the end of the Olympics, I think that all of them got a gold medal from the Romanians. You know, an honorary gold medal for just being there, participating, and you know, fighting for the not only for the Olympic victory, but also for the country's victory. And of course, it was a big step forward. I think that, and I hope, as recently the president of the National Olympic Committee, Mihai Covaliu, said, we are ever better and we will get ever more medals. I'm sure of that. Look, being placed on the 23rd place out of so many tens of nations, 100, almost 200, of course, 85 nations who got medals. It's not bad at all.
Not bad.
So I'm very proud of them. And we had a fantastic presence in the competitions, but also, who can forget, you know, Nadia Comaneci's appearance in the opening ceremony on the boat. So we were beautifully represented, and I'm very grateful. And all those who say that the athletes are the best ambassadors, yes, they are right.
Yeah, and usually when they have in these disputes or these little rumblings, do you get involved, let's say, over the sports, on the sports side, or do you leave that to the Federation or the Olympic Committee, such as the question about the bronze medal between the American and...
No, this is strictly about rules and regulations of the International Olympic Committee, of the International Sports Tribunal. These are strictly sports authorities, and actually they have to deal with all this.
I see. And when you get, let's say, beyond the world of sports, and we talk about icons of Romanian culture, who do you think, when you talk about Romanian culture, who individuals or events or things, which comes to your mind? I mean, traditionally, we've had all kinds of ideas, but today, here we are, 2024, who are the Romanian cultural icons in your mind?
Well, this is a little bit of a tricky question, my dear, because if you remember from your, you know, such, you know, passionate research, because I know that you love Romania with all your heart, and you've always been interested in the history and the culture and everything. The Titans culture struggled during their times.
Yeah.
They became icons 100 years after.
Yeah.
So it's about this dynamic between contemporary times and
That's right.
posterity. So it is a little bit tricky. But of course, if you were speaking about culture, and especially, I mean, you could see it with your own eyes at the opening ceremony at this global event, this global celebration. In terms of music, maybe we don't have a composer such as George Enescu, but we have an amazing conductor and music director, Cristian Măcelaru,
Yes,
who actually is the music director of the Orchestre National de France, and who conducted this orchestra at the opening ceremony. And he is a star here in France. He's a star in Europe. He's a star also in the US. I mean, he won a Grammy Award, let's be clear, right? So in terms of music, the first name that comes to my mind is Cristian Măcelaru. Angela Gheorghiu used to be, of course, an icon. Maybe in terms of, I don't know, art, remember Adrian Genie, because you could admire his work also plentifully in the US. And I'm sure that he is one for posterity who wrote history for Romania and for the Romanian art history. I could think of Mircea Cantor, who is an exceptionally versatile artist living here in Paris, who is actually the author of a beautiful tapestry called Angels and Plains, that is the Romanian art donation to UNESCO. And it has such an amazing quality that it got permanent exposure in the main lobby in UNESCO. So from now on, whenever you will visit UNESCO, you will see a Romanian mark in the main lobby of this very prestigious institution forever and ever. The Romanian tapestry called Angels and Plains. It's obviously a message of peace, but also a message about the Brâncuși's flight, the zborul, right? The flight, because this is a tapestry that is like a flying carpet, which is actually planted on the ceiling. The only artwork in the art collection of UNESCO that is actually planted on the ceiling, and it's beautiful. You just look up, down, you take your eyes out of all those screens that monopolize our eyesight. You go up and you see a beautiful Romanian artwork. So Mircea for us is very special, and he gets a fantastic global exposure here. And well, I could continue. We have a few.
A lot of there, because in a way, I know sometimes when they become famous in France, such as Eugène Ionescu, everybody thinks they're actually French. I've had that experience. And I said, well, no, they're not French. He's Romanian. And often there's a confusion, but you have other figures and names elevating. I think Queen Maria of Romania. I think they renamed the K.
I thought that you're referring to the current figures that are evolving as cultural icons. Of course, Queen Mary of Romania. I mean, can you imagine? I'm going to India, to New Delhi, where we, by the way, inscribed two very important cultural sites in the World Heritage. The outdoor ensemble created by Constantin Brâncuș in Târgu Jiu, and also the Dacia segment of the Roman Empire frontiers. So I go to New Delhi and I visit the Lotus Temple because it's one of the wonders of the city. And what do I see there at the museum next to the temple? Queen Mary of Romania, an entire wall with her, because she was the first queen or king, the first crown bearer who actually promoted the values of the Baha'i religion.
Baha'i religion, it's made in out in where she died there or almost at the end of her life in Balchik, and she embraced the religion to some extent. I wanted to know, you mentioned a little bit beforehand, why did you want to become a diplomat? What sort of brought you over to that? It wasn't just the fact you couldn't be a singer.
I was always mesmerized by the international relations. I couldn't even hope before the revolution to be a diplomat, but my principal told me that in the 5th grade, when they asked all the kids what they want to become, I said that I want to become an ambassador. So I think that there was something there in me. I think that actually between diplomacy, theater, and jazz music, which is my favorite genre, there is a fantastic similarity. And I think that that's an explanation why. In diplomacy, you have the mandate given by your government, but it's up to your personal qualities, how you implement that mandate, how you honor it. In music, in jazz, you have a music theme, but it's the improvisation who gives, the interpretation actually honors the theme. And in theater, you have the play, but it's the actor's skills who actually make it cool, right? So there is a fantastic similarity, and I think that I just felt like belonging here. And when I heard about a contest in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1991, I just tried my chance.
Right. That's amazing.
And it all started. The rest is history. 33 years of history.
People are always envious, I think, of diplomats, ambassadors. They seem to have such a lovely life in a way. But what are some of the kind of stresses that come with the job? Here you've been in important posts. You've been at the United Nations in New York for some time. You've been in important places that have been the crosshairs of various international, like in former Yugoslavia and Serbia. What are some of the stresses that people maybe don't take note of?
These stereotypes are very superficial. And I think that we as diplomats should do more in order to be, more, not honest, but more open about the sacrifices that this profession incurs. I'll give you just an example. How does my family life look like? My husband in Bucharest, my mom in Satu Mare, exactly on the opposite corner of Romania, my son in London, and my daughter in New York. That's how my personal life looks like. And it's an illustration, especially of the life of a woman diplomat. So in terms of personal life, there are a lot of sacrifices. And I will be very frank with you. If the revolution wouldn't have caught me already married and with 2 small kids, I'm not sure that I would have had the time to do these very important steps in my life. So I'm very grateful to that. There is a lot of, when you take this profession seriously, and especially when you're a career diplomat who does it purely professionally, right? Then you have to give 100% of your mind, of your heart, because this is a very, very effervescent profession from the intellectual point of view, from the cultural point of view, from the professional, political, diplomatic point of view, and you have to invest everything. These cliches with us just drinking champagne at receptions. Well, let me tell you, whenever I go home from the several receptions I have every evening, because we have 193 countries here, now 194 now, thank God, with the return of the United States, I'm hungry every time when I go back home, because at these receptions, we are doing our job. I solve in an informal way what I couldn't solve, the problems or the candidatures or the projects that I couldn't solve in the formal setting. So these cliches are very superficial, and it's only for kind of ignorant people.
Well, it's good for you to point that out. And I could imagine that you must have been situations where you solved in the context of a social situation or somehow smoothed over things, even with a so-called enemy or not exactly, somebody on your side. I mean, that's what a diplomat does. Can you think of any examples where officially Romania was not close to that country, but let's say I could think maybe in former Serbia at a certain time, but at a personal level, you were able to break through and open a channel or somehow look at a situation somewhat differently or get your government to do so. Can you think of any examples like that?
Well, look, in this, especially in the multilateral diplomacy, there is a big difference between bilateral diplomacy and multilateral diplomacy. When you are ambassador to a country, so you are working in the bilateral diplomacy, your target audiences are all the levels of the respective society. So if I'm the ambassador of Romania in France, my job is to work on absolutely every level of the French society. In the multilateral diplomacy, in UNESCO, for example, we are 194 countries, 194 ambassadors. They are my only target audience because they are the ones who are voting for my resolutions, for my candidatures, for all my projects. I don't care about the rest, right? I care about my environment. So we are like a family. So if you ask me not to greet my Russian colleague, I greet him, okay? There are, even if there are problems in the bilateral relations between our countries, in our circle, which is a huge one, but a closed one, there are, human relations. Exactly. So I think that an example that I could give you when someone trusted me as ambassador of Romania, but trusted me as a human being, was the example of my candidature to be president of the General Conference.
Right.
Because when you present your candidature, before announcing to everybody, you have to get the endorsement of your electoral group, which means the Eastern European group that contains Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, EU members or non-EU members. It's a very complex and very difficult electoral group, which almost never gets to consensus.
Right, I see.
When I presented my candidature, I didn't get any objections, as I expected, from the Russians, because they trusted me that if president, and as president of the General Conference, I'm not representing only my country, I represent 194 countries, including Russia, North Korea, Iran.
Right.
They trusted me that I can balance.
Right.
It's very delicate. Don't ask me about how delicate this balance is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it speaks a little bit about the fact that human qualities, not only political.
Mrs. Ambassador, you're popping in and out, at least on my screen. Jim, can you see? I see you there, Jim. You're hearing all of the ambassador's comments without interruption?
I am.
Okay, carry on.
I am.
Sorry about that. Just carry on. Yeah, so you were saying how incredibly complex, essentially, it is to have to deal with this consortium of 192 people. And in a way, that's a whole campaign in of its 94 in and of itself. Are your positions?
I have to say, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm sorry if I seem like bragging about it, but this is quite a historic achievement for Romania, because actually it's the first time when a Romanian is presiding over the governing body of UNESCO, and I'm the 5th woman out of 42 general conferences, only the 5th woman in the history of UNESCO. So, and actually, I'm the 3rd Romanian after Nicolae Titulescu, who was the president of the League of Nations, Corneliu Mănescu, who was the president of the UN General Assembly in '67. I am the 3rd Romanian to lead the governing body of an international organization. I'm talking about governing bodies, not about secretariats, right? So this is a historic achievement. And for me, it's very important that my candidature didn't even have to go through vote. I was elected by acclamation. So there was unanimous appreciation for Romania and for me. Well, this is it. So I'm very proud of this, but I couldn't tell you enough about how difficult it is to keep this balance. As a Romanian ambassador, I'm not allowed reasons to invite, for instance, to a Romanian event, the Russian ambassador. As president, I have to invite everyone. So it is in itself a diplomatic exercise.
It's funny that you mentioned Titulescu and Mănescu, the so-called Mănescu boys, the team of diplomats that worked for him, because I was going to ask you, is there any particular Romanian diplomat who was an icon to you, was a model to you?
Well, he was not a career diplomat, but I think that Mihai Botez, and I'm sure that you know who he is. To some, I have to explain, but I think that Mihai Botez, for me, was the absolute model. I think that I feel like I don't know, me and the colleagues that had the chance to work with him only for a few months and for 9 months, but memorable and historic months, because during his mandate, during those 9 months, for instance, me, as the first press secretary ever of the Romanian embassy in the US, had the chance, due to the fact that I had a visionary as a boss, I had the chance to build the first official site of Romania on the internet, which in 1995 was something new even for the Americans.
Yeah.
I think that we carry a little bit of the light that he spread in our minds. I feel like it's like a torch that I'm a torchbearer of Mihai Botez's spirit. He inspired me for an entire lifetime, I have to say.
Well, I mean, I know about your career as a communicator, as a professional communicator. I know you were the spokesperson for the foreign, I think the first female spokesperson for the foreign ministry, and then you gave courses, and then you had further training along those lines. And if you look at
I introduced in the Romanian curricula, academic curricula, the topic of international public relations. It's an academic achievement of which I'm very proud.
When you go to communications, what with one-to-one communications that are happening at an instant level between heads of state and so forth, it's a world of difference, obviously, from 19th century diplomats who were really speaking on behalf of their countries, whether they be from whatever countries. I mean, how has it changed as a senior diplomat in key posts, carrying out the messages and the objectives of the foreign ministry when you have this international exchange that occurs in an instant time at a very sometimes close level? Have you ever reflected on that?
Well, I didn't even have time to reflect, because I don't live in the luxury of having a press secretary in neither positions, neither as ambassador nor as president. So I don't have time to reflect. I just have to apply all the knowledge that I have, because I have 7 accounts on the social media, and I have to work on them by myself, right? You don't exist as a diplomat if you don't have excellent communication skills. That has been valid forever, but now in the social media, you don't exist. You have to learn fast and be very present, because you could do amazing things, but if people don't know about them, impact is zero. And it's not about your ego or about your personal ambitions. I never had any ambition but to do my job right, to do my job well. But it's about the visibility of your country, right? Whatever you do exposes your country. So for us, it's a sacred duty to promote our country in any way possible in social media. There is, unfortunately, and I noticed that because I'm actually, when I was foreign policy advisor to the president of Romania, I served also as president of the Public Relations Association of Romania, trying to help develop the governmental and institutional communication, and also the intra-institutional communication. Unfortunately, there is a problem these days, and somehow we will have to correct it, because many politicians think that they don't need press, they don't need spokespersons, while they need them very much, because being a spokesperson, and I know it very well, this is a 24 hours out of 24 hours job. You have to be there. A politician has many other very important things to do than being all the time at the disposal of the press, right? So this is a big mistake that many politicians and heads of institutions are doing. They don't have spokespersons. Then the traditional type of communication has been almost totally replaced by the social media. This is not right. You don't post only on Facebook something about Romania, and you forget to do also the traditional way, to make a nice press release, to put it under embargo, send it to the press, to 2,000 media outlets. We never have to forget about the classical means of communication, while, of course, we have to be very present on the social media. So this is how I see it.
How tightly are your positions prescribed by the MAE, by the Foreign Ministry? You're a very senior diplomat in the key posts around the world. I mean, are the missions, the objectives set in a very tight way? Are the interpretive license that you have in your positions allowed you to move with a certain amount of latitude and freedom? How does it really function in that sense?
Well, I'm a diplomat, so I'm like a soldier.
Yep.
Instructions from the capital are the fundamentals,
Yep.
right? But since I'm ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary, in certain cases, there is a certain flexibility in case there is a sudden problem that appears. I have the flexibility, the power, since I'm plenipotentiary, I have the power to take fast decisions. But of course, they trust me because they know that I'm very passionate and devoted to my country. And I didn't get to this senior level for nothing. So usually the instructions are very clear and we apply them, we implement them as much as we can. But in exceptional cases, I can be extraordinary. I try to be extraordinary all the time, but I can be plenipotentiary and take fast decisions. But very few cases and very specific ones that I cannot mention here.
Mrs. Ambassador, what was it like being in Iraq? That was a whole different situation. I remember talking to you, I think after you were there, it was more difficult, obviously. How was it like functioning there, working there?
Look, it's very difficult to talk in a few words about my experience in Iraq. First of all, because actually it was the first, all my life I've been working for the Romanian state as a teacher before the revolution, as a diplomat. I have to give you the little background. So after 4 years of being foreign policy advisor to the president and organizing the agenda of the head of state, and achieving victories like entering NATO, finishing the negotiations with the EU, organizing more than 120 visits abroad or in Romania at the level of head of state. It was a certain type of adrenaline that, my God, is the highest job possible. For a diplomat, this is the supreme crowning of a career, right? Suddenly, and it ends, and the level of adrenaline, but I had to change the type of adrenaline because there was nothing similar to experience in Romania. So I chose to work for an American international consultancy company, Bearing Point. So it was my first experience ever in the private sector and American one, right? Yeah. So we were actually in Iraq working on a program financed by USAID, right? Yeah. So for me, it was a complete new experience. I was just Mona from Romania. No, Your Excellency, no, ambassador. I didn't tell anybody that I'm ambassador, right? I was just Mona from Romania. And it was a rebirth, That's, I appreciate so much what the State Department does. For the mid-career diplomat, they just interrupt their diplomatic career, and for one sabbatical year, it's true, paid they are just going and experience, they work in a university or at the governor's office or at the senator's office. They are advisors to all these officials. So it's the real life that you get anchored to, right? So for me, that was Iraq. The problem was that it was 2006, 2007, and I didn't have a clue before accepting that job that the security situation will be so bad and that there will be so many bombings. Yeah. So I will never forget the first bombing. We were living in trailers covered with 6 layers of sand bags because we didn't have bunkers like the American embassy. We were close to the American embassy, but not in the same campus, in the green zone. So in order to stop the shrapnel, we had these sandbags. So we were actually in our trailers when the bombing started. And I remember that me, the powerful woman who thought that she can do it all, managed to raise children and maintain a family, irrespective of the personal sacrifices, build an impressive career, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I just surprised myself going and hide in the bathroom. I had a room and a bathroom in the trailer. And I was just, staying there, to my surprise, waiting for the first time in my life, waiting for others to decide
Oh my God.
if I stay in
Unbelievable.
this world or not. That was
Unbelievable.
a revelation for me. That was a revelation.
Danger of war.
And so my perspective on life changed. Before, Carpe Diem was my motto, but after that, it was like, live every moment like it's the last moment of your life. Carpe Diem in an extreme form. I swore to myself to never give up what I love the most, and I restarted singing in Baghdad. I had a band in the campus. So it was a transformational experience. Besides the fact that I got very attached to the Iraqis, to that part of the world, I understood better the dynamics. It was an incredible experience. And it's like when you are terminally ill, you are actually between life and death. And that's when you take some important decisions for your life. You get to learn late in my mid-40s to look yourself, to look in the mirror every day and say, thank you, God, that I woke up, that everything is in place. I'm alive. Gift in life is life itself, nothing else. Life itself. I managed to finally cherish what being alive means, right?
Fantastic.
And I'm very, very fond of those years. It was a 1 year and a half, a memorable one. Only in such post-conflict situations, you have the feeling that you really can help people. I was just helping, not with food like the World Food Program. I was helping them with building their press offices. I was training their spokespersons. I wrote the first public relations manual in Iraq. So I was on the soft diplomacy side, but it was an incredible experience, and I'm very grateful for it. I needed, unfortunately, to stop it after 1 year and a half because 5 of my colleagues were kidnapped, and it got much too dangerous, and I went back to the ministry.
What an amazing experience. Who would have thought? I mean, I remember it's clarifying at a very deep level to some extent, both in terms of life. In terms of the United Nations, where you served, United Nations have come under a lot of pressure. Now you're not directly involved with those activities, but when you think of the war in Gaza, when you think of Ukraine, and the criticism that's gone on the United Nations, what do you make of all that? Unfair, unreasonable? What do you make of the situation that the UN finds itself in to some extent today?
Look, there are a lot of voices that actually say that multilateralism is irrelevant these days. I strongly decline and deny this assertion because the most at hand topic, the pandemics, demonstrated how important multilateralism and international cooperation is. Don't work hard, you don't get criticism. I believe much in the UN system. I worked 5 years within the UN system representing the UN Secretary General in the Balkans, in a very, very sensitive region, right? Full of scars. And I really think I would tell those who are skeptical about the role of the United Nations? What? Please just go on their site and see the fact sheet that tells you what the UN is doing every day for the humanity. It's on the DPI, the Department for Public Information of the UN site. Please go ahead and see that. What the UN has been doing for more than 80 years for the humanity. And don't make superficial judgments, including, the statements of the Secretary General who were made in all these contexts of the war and everything, of the multiple conflictual situations happening around the world. Mm-hmm. He just stated facts. Yeah. And let me tell you, there are not only high officials of the UN. There is an army of unsung heroes. Yeah. The UN staff who is working in the field all over the world, You will never know how hard they are working and what a difference they make in the countries where they serve. So please try. I would tell the skeptics, please try to get more information and more objective information about what multilateralism means and what the UN and also what UNESCO does.
Yeah, exactly.
UNESCO is known just because, especially due to the World Heritage, the race of all the countries to be in the World Heritage, on the World Heritage list. No, UNESCO is much more than that. It has like 5 components of the mandate: education, culture, science, social sciences, communication and information. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Please read, get informed about what you're talking about. Don't just throw, cynical and superficial judgments on the air.
You're a keen watcher of American life. You always had a certain enthusiasm, I thought, when you're in New York. I remember you could feel it. And you made reference right now to your American employer in Baghdad. What do you think of, and in America, there's a discussion even of changing the composition of the Supreme Court, which is a discussion that sort of entered the U.S. Supreme Court. What do you think of the suggestion that the Security Council membership should align differently today from what it was, in the 50s?
Well, first of all, my love for America will never die. I was born on the 4th of July, so America celebrated me with fireworks even when I was not allowed to mention America, right? So the 11 years that I spent in America changed my life forever. Just imagine a Romanian who was never exposed to living abroad, going directly to her first diplomatic post in Washington, D.C., and then the first post as ambassador in New York. So amazing. I mean, for me and my family, this was a fantastic experience. So I'm very grateful forever. Well, the debate on the Security Council reform has been there for more than 25 years.
I see. I was into that.
And it's a delicate one. The world changed a lot in the last 25 years. I am not sure that we are ready for that reform. I think that we will still discuss on it because, of course, there are voices who don't agree, and there are powerful voices who don't agree on another composition of the Security Council. So it's like the $1 million question. Whomever will find the answer, but it won't be me. I can only follow.
It won't be now, in your opinion.
Debate. It won't be now.
As a female ambassador, do you feel in some way, is it necessary you have to work differently or harder in a diplomatic world which historically was very male-dominated? Do you think you have to do a little extra? You certainly have the extra, but do you feel it's necessary for other, let's say, female diplomats, ambassadors?
Big yes. I always had to work harder, especially in a country where it was totally male-dominated profession, right? In the US, you had women diplomats many tens of years, right? But if you ask me if I felt the discrimination or if my male colleagues hurt me, I remember more cases in which my female colleagues hurt me.
That's interesting.
I cried a lot in the bathroom. You don't build such a career only, in an easy way. No. I had my portion of crying in the bathroom. There were situations, in which I would, for instance, in a meeting where I was the only woman, especially when I was the spokesperson of the foreign ministry, I was the only woman at the meeting, and I would have an idea, nobody would care, and then a male colleague would mention my idea, and finally the attention is caught. So I went through all this, but they never hurt me. I love my male colleagues. I learned a lot from them. I have a very positive and very constructive approach regarding this. I'm not a frustrated woman. When I was ambassador to the UN, we were only, now I think there are about almost 40 ambassadors, women, out of 193. We were like 17 when I was ambassador, right? And I had, I was never compliment. I would never get as many compliments as in those years. But I had to be very careful because I didn't want to be treated like a doll, like a spoiled brat. I wanted to be treated like a partner of discussion, of serious discussion. So I had to earn the credibility, the professional credibility. I had to work hard in order to make them look at me not like at a nice lady, but as a very reliable and professional colleague. And that was for me a plus because that made me learn even more, and have the ambition to be even better prepared in order to, shine in a conversation or in a project together with my male colleagues. So no, I always treated it like a motivation, not like a frustration.
Those a challenge, something to overcome, as you're saying in that way. Do you think that the projection of Romanian culture, when I think back over the years of Romanian culture coming to Washington, and they'd have something on the Washington Mall, and it always seemed a little stereotypes, where they had people in kožoks, or they had, Romanian food, but it never seemed to capture, let's say, like in later years, the full range of Romanian culture, which has become, not just in folklore, but much more on the cutting edge. And I think, for instance, the Romanian Cultural Institute in New York demonstrates that a lot, whether it be in science or music or poetry or so forth. Do you think that the Romanian culture needs a bit of a refresh as we move forward, so some of these newer names and younger names come to the surface?
Well, absolutely. And I really think that the Romanian Culture Institute in New York is one of the best, if not the best, Romanian Culture Institute we have abroad. I mean, I appreciate so much what Doru Brana and his team are doing. Well, I'll be very honest with you. I think that we should be much more strategic in promoting the Romanian culture, the Romanian values around the world. I remember that during the times when I was at the Cotroceni Palace, when I was the foreign policy advisor to the president, the Romanian government had a national agency, the Agency for National Strategies, that was focusing mainly on the strategy of image, the branding strategy of Romania. I remember that we organized a lot of, debates, and we tried to bring the advertising world in promoting the country and everything. We don't have such an agency now, which is actually the one that is collecting all the institutional, individual, private initiatives of branding and make it like, a beautiful puzzle and make it strategic and promoting Romania in a much more professional way. I hope that maybe next year with the new leadership, we will have one, because I really think that we need that. There are a lot of interesting initiatives, but they cannot have the impact that they deserve because, the power of the governmental institutions is pretty important, and it could actually, the impact would be much, much bigger. So I think that a more cohesive, converged strategic vision of the image of Romania, of promoting the image of Romania, would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Do you think Western culture, or West European culture, to some extent, is as warmly received around the world? You go around the world all over the place. And do you think that sort of has to be re-examined, that how Europe, or call Western traditions, whether they be, I mean, I remember if you took the opening of the Paris Olympics, there was a lot of controversy over a scene with what people thought was the Last Supper. And many people who were Orthodox or conservative Christians in the United States were upset by that. Do you think that Western culture is on the same two strong-legged footing as it has been in the past? And is that should that be somehow reconsidered, reviewed, rethought through?
It would be fantastic, dear John, to be able to invite you to an event at UNESCO, because you feel the global dynamics very well in the debates here. And actually, a lot of people say that the debates lately in the last years, especially with the events happening all over the world, unfortunately, are ever more politicized. And that is why, small bracket, I, as president of the General Conference, had an initiative that will be one of the most memorable things that I will leave behind, to revive the intellectual cooperation dimension of the activity of UNESCO. Because why? Let me tell you, I think that there is Romanian audience who is listening to us, and maybe you should know that I'm trying not to make it too long in order not to forget what you asked me. Remind me if I do.
Okay.
This year, we celebrate 100 years since the International Institute for Intellectual Cooperation, which is the precursor of UNESCO, just like the League of Nations was the precursor of the UN, we celebrate 100 years. This institute, which was the precursor of UNESCO, was the executive branch of the International Commission for Intellectual Cooperation, part of the League of Nations in Geneva. Members: Albert Einstein, Marie Curie, Thomas Mann, Rabindranath Tagore, Paul Valéry. Secretary of this commission was the Romanian academician George Oprescu. When I saw a picture of George Oprescu having a coffee with Albert Einstein, my God, mind blown, right? So this gave me, of course, motivated me to organize this big event that I will have in September to commemorate this celebration, to have this celebration, but also to bring the attention of the member states to the archives of the Institute and of UNESCO, which are the memory of the world. My God, if you come to Paris and to UNESCO, John, you would be fascinated to see the wonders that are in that in those archives. So I started to mobilize member states to contribute to the digitalization of the archives, and I think that this will be my main legacy when I'm gone. Going back to your question, nobody has anything to do and nobody has anything against the Western values. Just don't try to impose values on us, say. Okay? This is a sensitive topic. To be honest with you, I am in awe looking at the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony. As a PR person, I think that the French did an amazing job in promoting their culture. Amazing job with both. Okay, that episode disturbed some viewers, but why don't you look at the things, in their entirety? It was an absolutely incredible display of culture, of values, of Olympian spirit. So I forgot about that episode. Of course, those who are more conservative didn't, and of course, a lot of ratings were made out of this problem, right? So we always speculate whatever there is something negative. We always speculate that, right? Not fair. And the closing ceremony, my God, God, I have only words of praise for how the French organized these two moments. And also, if you look, I'm sure you looked at a lot of competitions. And by the way, congratulations for, of course, the majestic place the United States occupied for good reasons, exceptional athletes. I mean, you would have a competition with the Tour Eiffel on the background. It was like a postcard, everything was like postcards from Paris. Hello, bisous de Paris. Absolutely fantastic. I have deep respect for the French for the way they organize. And of course, people are hunting for negative aspects. And that will never stop.
And they also got huge ratings. We're getting near the end of our hour, and I see Jim there.
I don't hear you very well. Sorry.
We're getting near the end of our hour. I see Jim is still on with us. Jim, do you have any questions yourself?
Well, I want to ask Luca if she had any from folks who are listening.
Yes, I don't know why, but
Yeah.
I'm trying not to, just spell the question, Jim, because I don't want to waste the last minutes on technical issues. My AirPod just died, and maybe that's
okay. Well, we can hear you.
So we actually do have a couple of questions. First of all, Doru Brana says hi. Second, we heard from our honorary consul to Connecticut, Dana Bucin, who says that we want to see Romanian art in Connecticut, USA, and are working towards that goal through getting Romanian American artists involved in creating a national heritage mural in Hartford, Connecticut. Do you have any suggestions?
Of course, I have a suggestion. Just contact Doru Brana. He's the master of any culture project. I'm so happy you're there, my dear Doru. I mean, I follow everything you do, and I love you guys. I'm so proud of you, of everything that you accomplished. So please contact Doru. You're in the right conversation.
They're next to each
he
other.
will do wonders, I'm sure.
Anything else there from state suggestions or questions?
Yeah, so we have a second a question from Obi Moore. Can you comment on the nature of the Romanian-U.S. relationship when you arrived in WDC in 1994 as press secretary, and to where it is now? What are the priorities for the Romania in the U.S. to achieve its so-called full potential?
Obi, as always, excellent questions. A big hug for you. Well, this is actually a topic for an entire conversation, to tell you the truth. But I'll try to be very quick. In '94, as press secretary, the image of Romania consisted in two aspects: orphans, Barbara Walters' discovery of the tragedies in the Romanian orphanages, and stray dogs. So I started from there. And I'm sure that if you compare now, because you know better now, because you live in the US, you compare the deficit of image that we had in '94 and what Romania looks like these days, there is a huge difference. There is a lot of hard work involved because several ambassadors and teams have been working on that. And I have to say that since we actually celebrate 25 years since the Smithsonian Institute display of Romanian culture on the mall, that was actually like a breakthrough that we beautifully celebrated due to Professor Eliot Sorel and the Romanian Academy recently. That was a breakthrough. And from there, you know, I see now that the Romanian presences are all over the place, all over the continent, because you are a beautiful continent, right? So all my admiration for those who have been crafting all this. And I think that the current teams in Washington, New York, and also the consul generals in Los Angeles and in Chicago, in all the country, have very clear priorities, and they are doing a great job. So trust them, support them, and work together with them.
That's fantastic. Jim, did you have a specific question?
Not at all. I just want to thank Simona for joining us. A fascinating conversation. Keep up the good work.
It was a 5-star summary in Olympic terms. You got a gold medal for presenting it very, very well and very convincingly. And thank you so much for coming. And I'll make a point of swinging by for one of those UNESCO conferences, which I used to cover as an AP reporter years ago.
Exactly. And it's an invitation, an open invitation to all those who had the kindness of following us, and a big group hug.
Thank you very much, Simona. Thanks a million. Lovely.